Hello everybody, it's Wyvern here with another bit of Total War Warhammer 2 Quick Match gameplay. This time around we are playing as the Lizardmen, so if actually I don't play all that often, against the Empire. And right off the bat you can see the Krox, not a very common pick, I don't think, in most matchups, but I think that in this one it's actually a decent choice. The main reason being that Empire has a lot of armor-piercing shooting, and if they bring just a bunch of greatswords, they can basically beat your front line. Saurus warriors can't beat greatswords, and in fact, Templar Guard lose to greatswords as well. So, what I did here, I did bring a bunch of Saurus warriors to act as a screen for the Krox and to kill off halberdiers, squishy infantry, back up with the line of Krox and kind of hoping that with this sort of build, as well as the Bastillon providing Rification Crystal support and a Terror Bomb, I should be able to kind of bunker bust through any Empire line pretty efficiently. For the rest of the comp, it's basically built around just helping these guys out. Obviously, you need some anti-large to deal with demigryphs, stuff like that. So we have Kroq and Saurus Veteran here. Kroq, pretty stripped down. He does have Swiftness of Eatslin Sacred Spawning, of course, as well as Hand of the Gods, just in case I want to try to do some character sniping. And then a Saurus who has the Plaque of Domination, or a Plaque of Dominion, which, -8 leadership stacked on top of Fear, Terror, usually the whole bunch of damage you're dishing out, is a pretty sort of effective tool in my opinion, and together these two should be able to kind of tag team any unit of demigryphs, hunt enemy lords, whatever may be necessary. On the flank we do have a single unit of skin cohorts, just meant to really flank and pressure the back line if possible. They are faster than infantry, though obviously slower than cavalry, so we'll see how that works out, especially because my opponent did bring a decent cavalry presence. On the flanks, 2 chameleon skinks, just to pressure enemy shooting, to poke away on unshielded units, cav, be a distraction, that sort of stuff. I've found that a lot of enemies tend to overcommit resources to shutting down chameleon skinks, so I think they're a pretty nifty tool in this matchup. The Skink Priest of Heavens, Wind Blast is good against infantry, so most Empire squishy backline troops like Sterling's Revenge or handgunners or Free Company Militia, whatever they might bring, are pretty susceptible to Wind Blast. Curse of the Midnight Wind, I think, is pretty good here, just to debuff enemy armor, make those greatswords a little easier targets for my Saurus warriors, and just make life a little easier. And then, of course, Harmonic Convergence, because it's a pretty cheap buff. And the Skink Priest, honestly, he doesn't have great winds of magic generation, so you kind of need to just bring whatever spells are pretty cost efficient, if at all possible. Usually I find that it's not really worth bringing more expensive, risky spells. That might be worth it with some of the better casters or better at casting casters. For my opponent's line, so we do have great swords, a very good pick against Lizardmen. These guys, you can see the Hammer, which is teeing off and poor Kroq, but the great swords, like I said, they'll beat every Lizardmen unit in a 1-to-1. Now, obviously, or every Lizardmen infantry in a 1-to-1, and they can do some chip damage to the monstrous units as well, because they don't have the greatest melee defense. The Bastillon here at 28. Honestly, even Kroq only has 40, so they can do some chip damage to him. And they're backed by a bunch of halberdiers who, once again, trade okay with the Saurus front line. Not amazing. They're not going to win. Unlike the greatswords, but they can trade okay. And honestly, against something like my Krox, they'll definitely do a great job. They are backed by a Lord of Lifecaster with Earthblood, with Regrowth, and with Lifebloom, though no Power Stone, surprisingly. And you can see the silver bullets here, of course, with their magic damage, immediately dropping my Skink Priest by about 800 HP. So the handguns are really strong, especially now that the Skink Priests and the Skink Chiefs got a nerf to their hitbox size. It's been increased, so they're much more susceptible. And you can see over here my opponent, because he was wasting so much time shooting at Kroq with the Hammer of Witches, he now isn't able to get any good shots into these guys. I'm able to creep up to this ridge, and I'm going to be able to get in on the Hammer of Witches without any interference. In the meantime, Kroq over here and the Saurus Veteran trying to position to fight my opponent's 2 Demigryph Knights, who he does have on the periphery, ready to interfere. And Boris is up in the sky with just the Midland and Runefang. Hold the line, surprisingly, which I don't really think is worthwhile if your lord is flying, and Crush the Weak. Now, interestingly enough, no White Cloak of Ulrich, which I think is a must-have if you're bringing Boris. But I see a lot of people don't bring it, and honestly, bring it, guys. It's great. It's really good. Either way, here, Skink Priest is just getting zoned away, and I basically just at this point I'm trying to swing around, go after my opponent's Demigryph Knights, isolate one unit, while my opponent is distracted trying to flank and roll up my line. And you can see the Kroq here completely dumpstering the greatswords. I do cast a Curse of the Midnight Wind here just to make these greatswords a little easier to crump, and they're collapsing pretty quickly. My Skink Priest did try to get a Wind Blast in, but just completely whiffed. Silver bullets rotated, and ruined my day there. Over here, you can see a regrowth does go down the demigryphs, so they're going to be a little tankier, though I don't actually know. It's not overcast, so it's not going to be that amazing. And you can see the Sarscar vet with Black of Dominion and with the Kroq in there. They're just tearing through these demigryph knights. Normally, I'm pretty sure demigryphs will trade pretty effectively with Kroq or Sarscar vet in a 1-to-1, but like this, they just don't stand a chance. My opponent's Jade Wizard is way out of his league here, getting chomped on, getting munched on by those big monsters, and so we're having a pretty good day. Unfortunately, Kroq did lose about half of his remaining HP. He's down to about a third overall, and he's just getting pounded by the Hammer Witches, which, of course, dishes out ludicrous amounts of damage per shot. It's like 500, I want to say. Yeah, it's over 500 missile damage with every shot. But we do finally get the Sarscar boys on there, and you can see a few of them did get clipped there by a cannon shot, but they're able to get the surround here. They're beating the snot out of these gun crew, and of course, gun crew doesn't hold up very well to a bunch of angry dinos. As for my opponent's line, at this point, it's basically breached. You can see the silver bullets here, heavily compromised, routing, and forced to flee. Unfortunately, the rampage is starting to kick in. You can see the Kroq scores being dragged into a bunch of halberdiers, which is a terrible situation. Now, granted, Kroq scores will actually do a good amount of damage to halberdiers. One of the things, Kroq score stats don't look particularly inspiring, but if you look at their bonus versus infantry, it's actually pretty monstrous. Bonus of 20, so against the halberdiers, they're hitting a good chunk of the time. They're going to be doing a lot of work, especially with the Sars in there, and holding up A-OK. Unfortunately, Kroq and the Sarscar buddy are getting torn apart by these demigryphs who did come back, and I did cast Cold-Blooded on Kroq right as that engagement kicked off to try to heal him up a bit, even though it obviously drops your melee defense. But Kroq at this point has been dangerously low, and I really don't want him to be getting sniped, because while it doesn't look like it, while the balance of power is pretty even at this point, if my opponent was able to get just, you can see most of my heavy infantry at this point is in tatters. He still has a good chunk of halberds, greatswords, even some silver bullets coming back to the field. So if he's able to snipe out Kroq, force some routes, Lizardmen aren't immune to terror. He's able to force some routes. I'm going to be in deep, deep trouble. Over here, the skink cohort, with a little help from the priest, is actually chasing off the halberds. They wouldn't have won that in on their own, but with a little bit of help from the skink priest providing harmonic convergence, they actually managed to beat up those halberds, push them off the field, and we're actually able to snag these demigryphs now. You can see Kroq very low still, but jumping around, doing some monstrous work. The Sarscar vet doing great work, and another Plaque of Dominion going down. This is honestly an amazing skill. I'm kind of surprised more people don't bring Sarscar vets just for this. The Midas 8 leadership, so nifty. Now my opponent pulls away immediately. I'm not entirely sure why. If he thinks the Plaque of Dominion is a damage ability and he just doesn't want to bother to find out. Understandable, but you can see over here, Demigryph Knights are going to pull away, and Kroq with those halberds, you can see just how much damage halberds do to Kroq. He's going to be forced to pull away and flee, while I leave the Sarscar vet in there to tie my opponent down, try to buy Kroq some time. Unfortunately, you can't see those tear outs again. Those Sars warriors, they're getting tear outed. Over here, we do manage to break this halberd line, and we're going to be able to force them off, but still, it's definitely a tight match. You can see over here, Kroq is getting hounded to death by these demigryphs. If the demigryphs get a hold of him, he's going to go down like a 9-pin. Over here, skink cohort, wasting its time. Same with these chameleon skinks. I'm just not using them, and I'm not on top of pulling my units back into the fight. My opponent actually did a pretty good job shutting down my chameleon skinks, but that's, once again, like I said, overcommitting. He sent his demigryph knights, which are a 1500 gold unit that was really needed to counteract Kroq. If he managed to hit Kroq with both, he would probably been able to win that fight, and spent chasing 1200 points of fairly useless chameleon skinks. I do actually drop my priest in there to try to tie down the demigryph knights, and at this point, things are finally starting to swing a little more in my favor. I actually turned Kroq around and have him charge in. Now, he's very low on HP, like we discussed before, but he's able to get the charge in there, and he's actually going to be able to route them, because rear charge penalty, all that sort of stuff. And I immediately cast another Cold-Blooded on Kroq just to top him off, while using the Skink Priest to chase the demigryphs off the field. And you can see Kroq rapidly regaining HP. One of those annoying but incredibly powerful Lizardmen mechanics, the ability to heal. And so here we go, recovering HP incredibly quickly. Over here, the Sarscar vet does get his jaws onto Boris Todbringer, who is forced to flee. You can see the noble Imperial Griffin being chased by a very, very angry Carnosaur, and Sarscar vet, I did hit him with a Revivification Crystal, trying to get that HP up a bit. And you can see my opponent's army at this point is really in tatters. He does have a few troops left here and there. He is still trying to hound Kroq to death, but at this point, with Cold-Blooded going down, all the support, Kroq is just not going to go down, and my opponent's army is going to break to army losses as we move on to the pop-up. So I do think always one of the things I think is always worth doing in quick match is experimenting a bit, trying unusual things, and trying to go for just try unusual things that your opponent isn't going to expect, that might on paper not look good against a faction, but can in practice work out reasonably well. And here we definitely saw it. Kroq was able to, with this Sarkarvet buddy, destroy the Demigryphs. Kroq scores performed incredibly well. You can see these guys, both of them actually gained a chevron. They both raked in dozens of kills, almost 100 on this guy, and they did really well against those greatswords. This is one of the big problems for Lizardmen in this matchup, is dealing with greatswords. And you can say, well, you can bring a Stegodon, you can bring a Bastillodon, but both of those units do very low amounts of damage overall. There's not a lot of models in the unit. Well, there's a single model entity, and their weapon strength isn't that high. They do have bonus versus infantry, but they take a really long time to chip away a greatsword, so unless you can force a really fast tear out, essentially, they're not going to do as much damage. Whereas Krox can just crush greatswords in a conventional manner. They go in, they've got their plus 20 bonus versus infantry, their weapon strength is over 100, most of that armor piercing. They've got over 40 melee attacks, so that you're looking at, they're hitting over half the time against greatswords. They're able to crush the unit very quickly, and the Sarsh warriors, of course, will not break, and they'll be contributing a good chunk to that as well. So I think it's a good combo against Empire. Obviously, you want to be wary of halberds, but that's what Sarsh warriors are for. And I think this is a pretty solid composition overall. I don't think that, like, obviously there's always counters to everything, but I think this, as far as countering Empire, this is pretty solid because you have some good chunk of anti-large. You've got all sorts of buffs and debuffs from the Skink Priest. You've got a good amount of harass. If your opponent doesn't go as cav heavy, you can be a major nuisance. And obviously, Empire can't overcommit to any one thing. If they overcommit to any one thing, they're liable to get rolled over. So this way, you're kind of able to, I think, deal with Empire pretty effectively. Now, granted, things could have gone a little worse. If my opponent had committed his Demigryphs into the fight, they would have probably crushed the Kroq scores pretty effectively. So that's definitely a bit of a risk here, but nonetheless, I think it's a pretty fun build. As far as my opponent's composition goes, I don't think it's necessarily a bad composition, but what I would probably try to do is get an extra unit of greatswords in there, triple up the greatswords, and then cut. You'd be left with about 1,500 gold if you cut a halberd and a half for greatswords. Then use your remaining gold to get an extra unit. Then use the remaining gold get an extra get a unit of handguns, an extra unit of handguns, and churn out spears. I think that would be a bit more of a competitive build. An extra unit of handguns is nice because if your silver bullets right now get shot down, your firing is basically done. The Hammer of Witches can't run, so it's much easier to compromise. And the silver bullets are, if they get compromised, you have no shooting, you have no more shooting pressure. So I think that it's good to have 2 units of handguns so that you can support each other if there's a breach in one area. Plus, for just that overwhelming fire, you can basically double up your burst. Demigryphs, you can see one unit did terrible, one unit did amazing. They're not a bad choice in this matchup, honestly. You just want to have them work together. If you have to fight 2 guys on Carnosaurs, bring 2 Demigryphs. And like I said, the White Cloak of Ulrich is an amazing choice on Boris. Always bring it if you can squeeze it in. Always have it. There's never a reason not to, I think. Either way, good game to my opponent, Naxxar here. I do hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, be sure to leave a like and subscribe down below. If you have any comments, any criticisms, any questions, any suggestions on how I could improve the channel, anything like that, be sure to share them, and I'll do my best to, work on. I always want to improve the experience for you guys. I always want to make it more entertaining, and hopefully keep the channel growing. So I do appreciate all of your guys' support. I do hope you guys enjoyed the video. And I will see you all in the next one. Wyvern out.